And I'm very grateful for you taking this motion today, and I'm very grateful for the Minister taking time to come in and take the question. Unfortunately, Minister, I have to say to you that fuel smuggling and fuel smugglers haven't gone away, you know. And instead of it being a problem that's in abeyance or in decrease, it's expanding and creeping all over the country. It's not just a border problem anymore. It's costing the Exchequer and the taxpayer an estimated €200 million in lost revenue every year. But it's also having a damaging effect on small businesses, the length and breadth of the country. I'm informed reliably by the motor industry representative group SIMI that there are now pop-up filling stations in Clare, in Galway, in Cork, in Kerry, in Laois Offaly and Longford Westmeath, all over the country, selling laundered fuel and adulterated diesel. And the fact of the matter is that it's putting legitimate businesses to the wall. It's having a profound effect on hauliers who are trying to run their business legally and costing the Exchequer, not to speak of the terrible environmental damage being done. Because I couldn't have timed this motion any better if I tried, because as you know, Minister, last night another fuel smuggling depot was unearthed in Cavan. And I think it's high time that the government crack down on these cowboys and put them out of business, because enforcement, I think, is too lax, and the range of measures we have brought to bear on it to date have simply not worked. And I would like to ask, Minister, what proposals the government have to curb this serious problem, the length and breadth of the country. Thank you.
Senator Antara.
Well, can I thank Senator Whelan for rightly raising this very important issue. I think he's raised it in the past, as other colleagues have done. And it is, particularly poignant that he has raised it on a day when information has come through revenue in connection with the illegal operation in County Cavan. And I think we all owe all of the enforcement operators, north and south of the border, a huge debt of gratitude for their ongoing work in this area, because they are. I also know, Cahirla, can I say, from information that was passed to me about the intimidation of local authority officials, people from the revenue, the enforcement officers who are being intimidated by these gangs, these illegal criminal gangs. Many of them, I suspect, connected up with paramilitaries, and we all know that as a fact. And we take this issue very seriously. I have today spoken to the Minister for Finance. I'm informed by the Revenue Commissioners who have responsibility for the collection of mineral oil tax and for tackling the illicit trade in mineral oil products that they are acutely aware of the threat posed by illegal activity and by tax evasion in this area, as Senator Whelan has outlined to the House. The most serious risk is the large-scale laundering of markers from diesel, which is subject to a reduced rate of mineral oil tax on condition that it is not used in road vehicles. Currently, Revenue collects $1.1 billion annually in excise duty from road diesel. So the scope for loss of tax revenue from this fraud is very significant, Cahirlock. It is important to recognise also that there are other costs associated with this criminality. Apart from undermining the competitiveness of legitimate businesses, it damages the environment, can damage consumers' vehicles, and sustains organised criminal gangs. For these reasons, Revenue has made action against illegal fuel laundering activities one of its top priorities. They're tackling the problem on a number of fronts, including robust and sustained enforcement action, implementing more effective controls in relation to oil distribution, and pursuing a more effective marker in conjunction with Her Majesty's Revenue and Customs in the UK. On the enforcement front, action is taken at all stages of the fuel supply chain, tackling both those involved in laundering and the selling of laundered fuel. In this work, Revenue is supported by well-established structures to ensure very close cooperation between all relevant agencies north and south of the border. The Cross-Border Fuel Fraud Group brings together representatives from a number of agencies, including An Garda Síochána and the PSNI, as well as the UK and Irish revenue authorities. There has been excellent cooperation between all agencies in sharing intelligence and identifying and investigating criminals involved in this fraud. Since 2010, for the information of the House, Revenue has detected and closed 14 oil laundries and seized 574,300 litres of oil, together with 9 oil tankers and 29 other vehicles. This important work continues to be pursued vigorously. Just last night, as I said, another oil laundry plant was uncovered in County Cavan, and 2 vans, bleaching earth, laundering equipment and a large quantity of laundered product were seized. While there's been considerable success, therefore, in detecting and closing oil laundries, it's recognised that this approach will not solve the problem on its own. Oil laundries need to be denied access to marked oil for the purposes of laundering, and they need to be denied access to the market for their laundered product. Since last July, the licensing regime for road fuels has been tightened up to make it more difficult for launderers to get their product onto the market. Revenue is engaged in a vigorous campaign targeting specific locations nationwide, with the intention of immediate closure of unlicensed outlets and challenging of instances of non-compliance. As a result, 38 filling stations have been shut down by Revenue because they do not have a licence on where in breach of licensing conditions. The key issue here is licensing. Under the new rules, you've got to obtain a licence to import oil into the country and a licence to obtain from the significant ports in the country that product. If you don't have the licence, you're turned down. And that ensures that we have a kind of computerised system that wasn't there in the past, Senator. So that's the key issue that has been introduced, licensing. In recent months, there's been a number of detections of the stretching of petrol oil methadone. Revenue is monitoring this situation carefully and will take all necessary action to counteract this form of fuel crime. In addition to the ongoing enforcement action, legislative changes that will enable more effective controls in this sector have been put forward in the Finance Bill, which was recently discussed, I know, in this House. These will lead to the introduction of a new licensing requirements for marked fuel traders. New arrangements will, for the first time, require any person dealing in marked fuel to hold a licence for this purpose. The granting of a licence will be subject to a tax clearance requirements, and the applicant will have to show to Revenue that any conditions subject to which the licence may be granted will be complied with. Revenue will be empowered to revoke a licence if any of the necessary conditions is breached. In parallel with the introduction of this new licensing regime, the regulations that lay down the detailed rules and requirements of mineral oil matters are being reviewed. It's intended that the requirements for record keeping will be strengthened and that a new requirement to make periodic returns to Revenue will be introduced. All mineral oil traders, including traders in marked fuel, will have to make regular returns electronically detailing their fuel transactions. So the advantage here, Senator, is that if we see in a small part of the country this enormous amount of oil being purchased by one of the larger traders, the question will now be posed as to why do you need this oil? What are you doing with it, given the sale of product in other parts of the garage? This, for the first time, gives us the power to do that. That wasn't in place up to now. Steps are also being taken in close cooperation with the UK authorities to acquire a more effective fuel marker. This is, I suppose, the kernel of the problem. Revenue is planning to go to the market shortly with the UK authorities to make a new marker. A good deal of preparatory research has also been undertaken here and in the UK, and we expect to proceed with this project shortly. Stringent penalties are prescribed for offences relating to mineral oil smuggling and laundering. For example, a person convicted on indictment of an offence of evading or attempting to evade excise duty can be sentenced to imprisonment for up to 5 years or a fine or both. Following a substantial increase introduced in the Finance Act of 2010, the fine is an amount not exceeding €126,000, or where the value of the goods is not more than €250,000, an amount not exceeding 3 times the value of the goods. I believe that these penalties provisions permit the courts to impose sentences that would act as a deterrent to involvement in this form of crime. The problem of fuel laundering and smuggling is a serious one, and the extensive enforcement action that is being carried out on an ongoing basis highlights Revenue's commitment to combating it. New legislation steps, some of which came to the recent Finance Bill, now an Act, are being taken, together with the work and development of a more effective fuel marker, will serve to enhance the effectiveness of this action. I can assure the Senator that there will be no letting up in the work against those involved in this criminality.
Brief question, Senator.
Thank you very much, Minister. I really appreciate what I think is a very thorough and comprehensive response, and I'm heartened to see the range of measures that various agencies of the state in terms of enforcement and detection and prosecution are taking. I suppose I'd say hopefully now we're finally sucking diesel, if you like, on this issue, because it has been a problem and it is escalating out of all proportion. And I suppose the other question, Minister, I'd like to put is that, you know, people may well think that they're getting cheap fuel, if you like, but whether they're willfully or unwittingly putting laundered fuel, laundered diesel in their cars, they're causing themselves a world of bother. My understanding is that it can cost up to more than €3,000 to repair damaged vehicles. And I welcome the effort you're making, Minister. And also, I wonder, you know, is there any provision in place, because the local authorities who are hit with the burden of cleaning up these laundering operations, it's a serious damage to the environment. And as I said, it's no longer just a border problem. But I do welcome genuinely the moves you're making on licensing and the supply chain verification. I think that will help bring this to heel. And I think I hope to see more prosecutions before the courts, and I'd like to see the courts implementing the full rigours of the law to make sure that those deterrents are put in place to bring this criminal activity, which is putting legitimate businesses out of business, that at no stage do we let up in our efforts in this regard. Thanks, Minister.
Well, can I thank the Senator for the great interest he's shown in this and highlighting this here in the House. I think from his own location in the country, he knows that this is a nationwide problem. It's not confined to the border region. But he also says in his supplementary question, Cahirlock, the impact on local authorities. He's absolutely right in this, because I understand since 2003, central government has provided 4.5 million for the purposes of supporting local authorities in Louth, Monaghan, Offaly, where it comes to the clean-up operations generated from this activity. As I understand it, the fuel launderers produce a huge amount of sludge attached to the activity, and that's then dumped in fields, on roadways, and our local authorities then have to pick up the cost of that. Now, at the moment, the cost is borne centrally. In fairness to the Department of the Environment, they recognise that it's not fair for the local authority to have to pick up the cost. But even that amount of money, 4.5 million, is the kind of environmental hazard and pollution that's been created by this. I recently met colleagues in the Louth area who also outlined to me through their local authority the very substantial costs that are involved here. So this is an issue right the way across the country. It's an issue for revenue, because the loss of tax and revenue at a time when we need to take as much money in as possible. It's an issue north and south because of the activities of paramilitaries on both sides of the border, and it's an issue for our local authorities. And I want to assure the Senator in the House that this issue is taken at the heart of government really seriously by the Minister for Finance, myself and Revenue, and any and every effort will be made. Let us see this year the effect of the licensing regime and the supply chain that we have put in place as a result of the finance bill. I think this will make it harder for this criminal activity to succeed, and we will monitor it closely this year.